Well, it doesn't show. I can see there's people there, but I can't see who or what's going on. It's my new reality in Facebook, which is disturbing but kind of not expected being Canadian. Now, everybody, this video I promised many followers, actually, many of you reached out, several ladies, one gentleman, and that was back before I was banned for my 30 days. And it was on Roseanne Barr and a podcast she did with MEL. And it goes right into all the globalist agendas, UN, you could say a lot of stuff, QAnon, many, many things. And these ladies, and this is for you, I say, dear Roseanne Barr, if you take the time to watch the video, you guys went into the Commonwealth. You touched on colonial constitutional monarchies, some of at least the British Commonwealth, and some of their agendas. Now, I liked where you guys were going. You had reservations. You were still looking at the UN. And I want to be really clear here, especially for Roseanne and Mel K. The UN, like I try to tell people, is United Nations, meaning to have a seat there, to have any say, any vote, or the ability to present, you must be one of 193 recognized countries. If you're not that, you don't get to present, at least in one of the organs called the General Assembly, your idea or your proposed resolution. And you can bring that forward, and they can even have a vote on it. And as we see many, many times throughout the entirety of the United Nations since 1945, those resolutions get shot down. And they get shot down by the highest organ of the UN, those with the ability to enforce law and make law, absolutely international law, is the United Nations Security Council. People, specifically the permanent 5 members, each hold a veto. Why? Because they are by far the most powerful nations in the world. Not an accident, as they were the winners of World War II. They were called the glorious allies of World War II. Make no mistake, contrary to everything you hear, when it comes to military might in this world, in space, in navy, in air, you will watch Russian USA trade off ever since that time till now as number 1 and number 2 spots. In fact, today, in air superiority, there is no match for the United States of America. Now, China's coming up there, but they don't have the ability to stage aircrafts all over the world. You need places to land, you need mobile networks. USA has that. They hold that number 1 spot. When it comes to Navy, proven, that's clearly, when it comes to depths of the ocean and the ability, it's Russia. When it comes to nuclear, it's Russia. When it comes to troops, it goes USA and Russia. Then you start getting into all the other countries. China falls in there in 3rd place on many fronts in sheer manpower. They're number 1, but you can look throughout all kinds of big countries, much more populated, that hold that sway. But again, they don't have the tech, they don't have the firepower, they don't have the equipment in these arenas. Those are absolutely and forever and a day what's called the P5. That is USA, Russia, China, UK, then France. That's the weight of their might. And combined together, all of those five allies of World War II, which fits the number 1 rule when it comes to law. Doesn't matter where you go to school in the world, when you study law, you graduate a program that teaches you law, folks. Law is only law with the ability to enforce law. Get it? You can come up with all the laws you want. You can make all the bold statements you want, all the wants and needs. But if you can't enforce your laws, there are no laws at all. And that's just reality. Very common sense reality. When it comes to international law, those 5 vetoes clearly have the edge on enforcement. Now, we can talk about France and UK on the weaker side today. Other things I see people talk about when we get into COVID-19, I try not to look too much into that and a lot of the misinformation. But what I can tell you, in absolute evidence, is the ability of those 5 allies beyond all nations in the world, because they voted a pandemic. They didn't vote for lockdowns and shakedowns and crushing people's civil and human rights. They never voted for that. They said it was a pandemic. And those 5 countries got to work on vaccines. Who are the big winners? Clearly, it went Russia, it went USA, then it went China. That's how it goes. No other of the 193 nations got anywhere close to producing vaccines in record time, getting them out to distributing to as many countries. Russia was first. Russia hit many, many countries. USA was second. They hit even more countries. And in fact, USA made the most COVID vaccines and reached most of the world with the most set system of build, distribution, manufacturing worldwide. Then it was Russia, and then it was China. Now, China made a lot and they distributed a lot, but China's very big. They're 1/8 of the world's population. So, of course, when it came to domestic supply, yeah, China was third place, and they came out with the vaccines too in their own right. But it just showed the power of the Allies. Nobody else even came close. UK completely fell on their face. France never really made it off the ground. And it shows you the strength of 3 nations, as it always does. Whether we look at space, nuclear, any sophisticated designs, or firsts in the world, like landing on the moon, or Mars, or Venus, or all these other amazing things, you will find it's only of the Allies who really produce beyond everybody else by a large margin. Now, why I'm getting into this is because when people talk about agendas, they talk about this globalism. We're all feeling and seeing, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, everyone's talking about it. But there's been pitfalls put in front of us. And I know with Roseanne and MEL, they kind of touched on the monarchies. They looked at the British side and said, oh no, that can't be it. But I'm here today to give some more evidence to really help Roseanne Barr and MEL. Again, I'm not QAnon. I'm not a whole bunch of other things. I'm not anti-UN. As I study the UN, probably as a living person in North America, I'm probably the most studied of the United Nations, specifically the United Nations Security Council. I've read every resolution, every report, everything that they've ever done since 1945 until today, and I continue to do that. Many UNSC reps. They even have Kelly Knightcraft. She was Donald Trump's UNSC rep, and upon her dismissal by Joe Biden, she friended me right away. I was one of the people she friended. I mean, that's a pretty terrific thing, right, for an average guy. And just for Roseanne and MEL, if you watch the video, I make this for people who will possibly watch the video. Hope she does. But I guess that's up to all of you to share it. There's so much that we're misfed and not told. And one of the biggest things for Americans and for you, Roseanne and MEL, is the Atlantic Charter, signed, sealed, certified in 1941. Again, we had rising nations to power, the United States of America, and we had also the Soviet Union of the time. And we also had the Rock China, the People's Republic before communism. They would later become Taiwan. Now, those 3 countries, China was in a major civil war. It was left to Russia and USA, who were not boots on the ground in World War II. They were out of it. And there's a reason for that. And for Roseanne MEL, there's a lot of slamming done around the world about USA. Oh, if you had gotten into the war earlier, if you had done more. I'm going to tell you why the American government of the time didn't, and why the Soviet Union government of the time didn't. Because contrary to what everyone is told, World War One was actually Colonial War One. When you look at all the players and you look at the rewards of Colonial War One, you will see that it was colonial assets transferred from one colonial power who lost to another, and all of their group, their Axis group, and then the Allied colonial group. None of these people remotely fit the definition of American constitutionally. In fact, at the time of World War One, all of those countries embedded into World War One were anti-American. I know this is hard for people to fathom, but when you live in a constitutional monarchy, when you are the 180 degrees opposite of that which is constituted, made constitutional, written in to the highest laws of the land that makes Americans, when you're a subject in a constitutional monarchy, written in your rebuilding phase to be 180 degrees opposite of you, I think we have a better perspective on this, and you can all look it up yourself and see the absolute truth of this. So those colonial war ones were all divine monarchs, 9 monarchies who all went to war over colonial assets. Something long gone from America. America was not a colonizer, didn't participate in colonialism, farthest from it. They didn't want to get involved. This is the same for the Federation of Russia. In fact, in World War One, contrary to what every American's told, you were fighting for the Russian Federation, the same Russian Federation we see today post the fall of the Soviet Union. The United States of America was involved in World War One in liberating and helping to fight for the Federation of Russia. Now, they lost, the Federation of Russia group lost, so did the Americans. They lost many lives. I know nobody ever talks about this history, but you can look, there's a great big naval war hero from the United States, and many Americans lost their lives fighting for that Russian Federation against the Soviet Union, World War One. Now let's fast forward, but before I do, I'm going to leave you with this. The League of Nations under, yes, the British Empire of the time, like all the other empires, we can look at the Ottoman Empire, the French Empire, the Portuguese, the Spanish. We can go on. The Spanish were really restricted to Europe and a few little island assets, very small. Largely, by 1898, America had wiped out the Spanish Empire. Not only did they push the evil post-Civil War North and South, where the racism comes from, where the constitution of those southern states comes from, is the embedment of colonial Spain. This is important, real, credible, deadly accurate for Roseanne and MEL to understand. When you go look at the map of all the states, north and south, you'll find that it was the U.S. in its constitution, in what it was designed from 1776 onward, and how the states were to be codified in their division of powers, that evil had to be diminished. And America did. And after the Civil War, they didn't stop there with the South. They continued on and destroyed the entire Spanish Empire, colonial empire. All papal bull doctrine removed entirely from everything around the world. That's all America did post the Civil War, all the way through to 1898. People don't like to talk about that, but that is truth. That happened. As this time is going, you have what would lead to Axis and Allied powers, a breakdown of many kingdoms. There's 9, in fact. You can go look at this. 9 kingdoms who all codified people as subjects, which according to Webster's American Dictionary, is a slave. According to the Russian Logos, that's a slave. We can go on into all kinds of other dictionaries of other republics around the world that will use various terminology like peasant or other, and they will tell you this. Monarchies don't like to tell you this, they like to hide that fact. And more so, they also design a savage person that did have a place in American history, did happen in America, but America grows through its constitution, follows its system, and gets rid of all that. They get rid of it. And that's all America's ever done in its entirety. Some things take time. I can tell you slavery existed long past USA removing it. It was absolutely part of the Spanish Empire, which many other empires still kept. And the whole philosophy here is empire of kingdoms, of divine human beings who rule as gods over living men and women that they call subjects, and even worse, savages. And they write this into their laws. And in fact, I am in Canada, my country, post the American Civil War, constituted all of that in their written constitution. If you ever wanted to see the opposite of the United States Constitution, that would be Canada. You had your Civil War, you had your rebuilding phase, and guess what? Canada said, poof, here we are right at your border. We're going to be the opposite of you. Everything you represent, we the people, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, all of that is not us. We're the opposite. We're going to list all our preferred citizens in first class, just like so many other kingdoms, but we're going to put it in writing. And as the empires go through World War I and on, even the country Israel, they got to pick up that design and apply it. When the Ottoman Empire, another colonial, fell, another kingdom of subjects and defined savages, when it fell, the British took it because they beat them. They created Israel and they created subjects, divine first class, meaning divine human beings. They're of God and the others are not. Some will be slaves and some will be made savages. This happens all over the world. It is entirely most of the world, a large majority. It's always been there for 5,000 years. You can look at Egypt, you can look at all kinds of kingdoms through history that just keep rinsing and repeating. It was the United States was the first country to throw that ideology away, rebel against it, and win and codify a system to have it never again. When we get into World War I, the League of Nations, subsequently colonials won. They took assets from other colonials, slaving people who didn't get any independence, no sovereignty, no humanity, and became subjects or savages of these divine colonials. And we say, wow, good thing the Allies won. Now, this wasn't America, this wasn't the Soviet Union, and it certainly wasn't China. When you go on forward, get to World War II, something happens. The Allies fall to what they called the Axis. Early on, USA and Russia are not there. It was a war again of subjugation and savages. And unfortunately, UK and France were falling in their same system as other colonials because they were fighting for dominance over other peoples that they deemed non-human beings or that would be their slaves. They're less people in their pyramid scheme. Well, they ran into trouble and they had to get a bailout. They needed USA. They needed Russia. They had the Yalta conferences. They had the Atlantic Charter 1941. Roseanne, MEL. Read the Atlantic Charter between the United States of America and the colonial powers known as Ally and what they promised to the United States of America. Read that. by King George VI and one Winston Churchill. Read all the letters, all the reports, everything the United Kingdom of the time, British Empire, and the French Empire of the time, France, who had gotten completely wiped out by Germany, see what they promised, and many other kingdom countries, what they promised to the United States of America, what King George VI and Winston Churchill promised the United States in order for them to assist in destroying the Axis colonial powers. They're all colonials, all opposite, absolutely, didn't matter. Germany, Britain, France, Spain, Portugal, we can go through all of it, Muslim Brotherhood, through Egypt, all of it, former Ottoman Empire that the UK had taken, all of that was going on, Japan, Imperial Japan, another, we are the superior Asians against all the Chinese, Filipinos, doing all the most horrendous human rights violations, all of these kingdoms, and that's what they are. Kingdoms of divine elites, opposite of everything that's America, even opposite of everything that was the Soviet Union, absolutely everything that's opposite of what the Russian Federation is today, in how they view human beings, in equality of the person. In these other places, it's equity of the person, a pyramid scheme, where you say these people are elite, listed by name in their actual customary law titles, elected, and then there's a whole appointed side, all some royal divinity. Church is always understate in all of them, whichever church they pick. And you really got to start looking at this, especially when you get into the Muslim countries, in the Middle East, when you look at Saudi Arabia, you're going to start seeing a reoccurring pattern, like I have, like many academics around the world have seen. When you go through that, you realize Atlantic Charter, this promise, never again, you help us. That was both for the Soviet Union and the United States of America and China. You come in, you bail us out, and we're going to change the world. We're going to give everybody independence. We're going to get everyone sovereign. We're going to do an education to teach people how to be real citizens, just like an American. That was the agreement. Go read the Atlantic Charter, 1941. Go read all the letters to Roosevelt from Winston Churchill and King George VI, back and forth through those years as they signed it off. This is real. It happened. It's logged. Nobody talks about it because everybody did a 180. Now, not the United States, not Soviet Union, not the Russian Federation of today, and certainly not China. You'll see China as a major victim of serious colonialism, especially by some of those empires that the USA isn't so tight with now. Now, folks, when and Roseanne and MEL, when that Atlantic Charter 1941 was signed, the Yalta Conference, and there's others. When you read all the letters, you see the signing. It's vastly different, entirely 180 degrees different than the new Atlantic Charter, fast forward 2021, by Joe Biden and Boris Johnson. It's completely opposite. In fact, it forces the United States, through Joe Biden's presidential signature as his presidential power and order in an international treaty, basically. And when you read the new one, it looks nothing like the old one. In fact, it signs you on to a Green New Deal, a whole kingdom system that makes Americans equity of the person. Does this sound familiar? Diversity, equity, inclusion. You can't have equity of the person in the United States of America. It's illegal. Whether you're a billionaire, or whether you're a janitor, or whether you're a housewife, whatever have you, every American is equally valued. Police are sworn to that. Military is sworn to defend that. Every American is born in that oath or pledge of allegiance and every American who, or every citizen that comes, or subject, or what have you, that comes to America, wishes to be made a citizen, must swear that oath. That's everything America. That is not a vast majority of the world. Vast majority of the world swears fealty to a divine elite set of people that are even listed. When you read the United States Constitution, it talks all about, even the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, and even the Constitution tells about we the people this, we the people that. It tells all the powers of the people of the United States. You're going to go through several pages before you even get to the government elected. Yeah. And then what powers they have of limited appointments with a ton of we the people checks and balances. Now the opposite happens in countries like Canada in a colonial system. Completely opposite. One, you lose your sovereignty. That's first stated in the opening description of Canada's Constitution. It's called a preliminary preamble. USA's preamble is beautiful, right? We the people, and it goes on, it tells you all these great and wonderful things about you, the people. That doesn't happen in Canada. It says you lose your sovereignty, you will worship this divine elite, you will follow these rules, just like a whopping vast majority of the world. The Commonwealth alone has almost 70 nations attached to it. 53, I believe, today that are absolutely enshrined in that same Atlantic Charter that Joe Biden signed every American onto, that is completely unconstitutional and technically illegal. If you took that to the Supreme Court, there's no way that that could be made law in the United States. But it has been. It has been made law by one Joe Biden and all his narrative on the Green New Deal. Now, everybody says this is all the UN. It's the UN made laws. Every United Nations Security Council permanent member, the five, gets a veto. If they use that veto on anyone's presentation or vote for laws, even if 192 nations sign something into law, one of those five says, nope, it's in the garbage. It's very hard to get anything from the General Assembly made into international law. What is an international binding law forced on the world is beautiful. Beautiful. And many countries today violate that, and many, unfortunately, many Democrat presidencies violate all of it. The worst I've ever seen, and everything I've read, even JFK and his missteps, and there's a few there, and others. But when you look at Joe Biden, 25 times in less than 4 years, Joe Biden has attempted and has violated international law, violated the Constitution of the United States of America, violated every precedent law set by the United States. It's gross, it's wrong, but he does it. When you read the Atlantic Charter just after he got into office, literally the first thing he signed was he signed American sovereignty away. He signed away the Constitution. Last time I checked, when you read the naturalization laws, and just so everybody knows, when we talk about naturalization laws in the United States, that oath of allegiance, those are the natural laws, all the things all Americans are born with. And when a president signs that away from you in the United States, that's absolute treason. And I'm surprised Americans haven't gone forward with that. But going on to the Atlantic Charter 2021, all 9 kingdoms in the world with many, many colonial assets, meaning we're talking more than 100 nations in the world today with strong colonial ties where their governments are corrupted. And yes, they're a big, bad UN voting bloc, everybody. But remember, they can't make their agendas, their narratives, they're all found absolutely all throughout the Commonwealth. More than that, all you have to do, Americans don't pay carbon tax. I know, Roseanne, you wouldn't even look at this. I know, MEL, you wouldn't even look at it. But if you take a map of all the countries in the world who pay carbon tax, they're all monarchials, they're all colonial assets of monarchials. And do you know what it paints? It paints your illegal immigration network and the road from the south all the way up into the southern US states. Paints a clear road just in carbon tax. Do you know where that's found? All through these UN agendas, but you know where it's found first? In the Commonwealth Charter. So you didn't sign that. You're American. You wouldn't sign that. But you signed the Atlantic Charter that brought you a back door into it. And that's why all these countries are just pushing it right into the United States. Joe Biden did that behind every American's back, and no one's talking about it. None of those corrupted Democrat elites. It's real. And there are rhino Republicans who are in bed with it too. There are some high position Republicans, but there's still a great set of GOP that won't breach their rule of law. They won't violate the Constitution of the United States of America. They won't violate the checks and balances of we the people. And they don't. And they hold strong and fast. And I hope that comes this November with Donald Trump. I hope that we see an end to this stuff. Biggest thing America could do, cancel the Atlantic Charter 2021. Worst thing Joe Biden ever did. It's about making Americans subjects again. And you think about the massive illegal migration going into the United States and this upper crust or people who've done well in the States that think it's a good thing. You've lost the first and foremost largest check and balance you have. Natural law, meaning laws you're born with, is naturalization by James Madison. Created it first in one of the 13. He instituted it, implemented it. Every one of the 50 states, including New York and California, has it to this day. And even by 1790, before James Madison, worked out the rest of his life and kind of moved away from the political side of design, that amendment, 1790, that's USA-wide federally. And it's there. That tremendous oath of allegiance is there forever. And it's the most important check and balance of America. A check and balance that does not exist for your northern neighbors, Canada, and it certainly doesn't exist for more than 100 nations around the world. More than 100. Never mind the problems of unitary states and everything else who are just as corrupted, or republics who make the face that they're somehow like you, but they're not, and everybody knows it because they're only using the same terms like Prime Minister and Governor General, like Canada, which is a monarchical design. They trick Americans through Webster's. We're in Oxford. You look at our definitions as though it's Webster's. That's the greatest trick of the crown, especially the UK, Canada, many others. There's a whole Spanish, Portuguese side too. Not as big as the French and the UK are today, but we've all let that happen by not being diligent, by taking for granted legal speak. And again, words written in Webster's, when you say, what's a Governor General? That definition is not the same. Same words, different definition in Oxford. Completely. And you can go on through it. And a lot of Americans are blinded by it. A lot of Russians are blinded by it through the lexilogos. They'll see the same term and say, oh, it means this. No, it doesn't. Read it in Oxford. Totally different definition. This is just one example. There's so many. So folks, before you get into the corruption of the UN, be thankful the allies we have are there, because if they weren't, these would be bound on us in international law. The sad truth, folks, is this is corrupt politicians in your home country attached to divine human beings in a far-off land. Everything the United States of America fought the War of Independence to be free from forevermore. And to this day, that Constitution stands. Challenge after challenge, it does stand. And that upsets people, but people don't know what it's like to be a subject, or worse, made a savage. They don't know what it's like to lose all your rights and freedoms, to not be allowed to protest, to not be allowed to speak the truth, to be censored beyond all belief. And if America fell tomorrow, or even if Russia fell tomorrow, and even sadly, if China fell tomorrow, it would be really bad world. We'd be right back to old world order. It would be what my ancestors and many American ancestors long before my ancestors had migrated, because we actually migrated to the United States first too. But before those ancestors migrated largely from Europe, they were peasants, subjects, or savages on a lord or majesty's land. And that continues today. We don't have the land availability in Canada that is graciously awarded in the United States. American Indians are the savage Indian in Canada. I know Americans don't know that. Many American Indians don't know that. But this is the truth. Canadians have a tremendously much harder time. Our land values are overvaluated, large, more than 12 times what Donald Trump was convicted for of overvaluation in New York. That is the average Canadian's overvaluation, tremendously more than anything could be experienced in the United States. 90% of Canada's crown land, you look at this big country, you think, oh, look at it. Go start looking around at the colonial jewels. You'll keep seeing this crown land. Did you know no one's allowed to live there? No one can forage there. No one can make a living. All of it belongs to the wealthy elite crown defined in our Constitution, appointed by our politicians. And they rape, pillage, and plunder us, just like the ancestors did way back in the British Empire of old, French Empire of old, and all those 9 kingdoms who are still alive and well today. They create all the agendas. There's no such thing as a UN NGO. There are no NGOs, non-governmental organizations in the UN at all. It's against the charter of the UN. Now, there's a lot of nations who bring them forward and they'll make a website and say, oh yeah, they'll even use decals like the WHO. They'll even make a UN decal. Go look up right now the only UN decals logos there are registered with the United Nations. WHO is not United Nations. Their logo is not United Nations. You can't put snakes and symbols and rotate the continents. That's not approved by the allies of World War II. They've never ever allowed it. And you can read all the resolutions. They don't accept it. We're watching the WHO fail. Where is the WHO winning today, folks? And for you, Roseanne, and for you, MEL, where is the WHO winning? Oh yeah, and all the monarchical and unitary states, all those of the old world order, out of the League of Nations, they've never left. Where is the address of all the NGOs? WHO, WEF, IMF, we can go on and on and on. Don't be confused with human rights binding laws and the Human Rights Council. Now, under social economic, there is a United Nations Human Rights Council. But it is in Switzerland. It is not a binding organ. It's a tier, several tiers down, and it is surrounded by all the League of Nations and the same offices they occupied under the League of Nations that America was never a member of. USSR got into it, but got out of it. They formed the United Nations without all of that. The League of Nations, the Palace of Nations, there are 26 NGOs that everyone has a problem with. Everybody talks about. They're not registered in the UN. They live in the old League of Nations building facility called the Palace of Nations. And they're funded by countries, just like the Commonwealth, all of them fund it too. You can go through, you'll find the International Migrant Organization. There's your war on America. Like I said, type in carbon tax countries, carbon pricing countries. That's not Russia, that's not China, that's not USA, not most of Africa. Then you're going to see all your Southeast Asia countries. You're going to see two countries in Africa. You're going to see a tremendous amount of South America. You're going to see Europe all over the place. Now you know your migrant crisis. Now you know your migrant crisis. And you can follow the IMO all the way down south where they fly everybody. Countries like Canada and many, many others with massive more immigration than you. Did you know my country, Canada, last year, 1.3 million people we took in out of the United States? That's nothing. We're over 6.5 million. What are you talking about, Dave? Well, we were 39 million people. You're 342. 342 million. We're 39. We were. Now we're 40,750,000. When you do the ratio, you're nearly 9 times our size. You put the equivalent for every 71 Americans, you get one legal or one illegal immigrant, one or the other, 1 to 71. In Canada, we don't have illegal immigrants. It's all made legal, no matter what. And for every 31 Canadians, we get one legal immigrant, regardless if they were illegal or whatever. It's transformed into that. 2.5 times the immigration rate of the United States, fully legal, meaning all your legal, which is 70% of what's going into the United States that's going to get booted out, that's made legal in Canada, times 2.5 times more. That's what we get. And we filled up, and now we fund all, put it to you this way, in real numbers, that's credible, real, verifiable, nobody can deny. You won't find anyone. For every $1 an American spends towards immigration, meaning people coming and advertising come to America, the average Canadian spends 50, the big 50, $50 to every one American dollar in USD on immigration. We employ in our immigration program almost 5 times as many in America. Think about that. 342 million, 39 now, 40.75 million people just this year. And we're spending that much more money. We employ that many more people than the United States of America. What you spend on your wall was nothing compared to what we spent on advertising and bringing immigrants all over our sphere in the Commonwealth and the 9 Kingdoms. Countries everywhere. I got friends who work all the world, just like Americans. If you have friends who do offshore or other, different industries are all over the world, and they'll tell you, oh yeah, I go into this country and there's a advertisement, there's a facility, oh, Canada's taking immigrants, they promise them the world, come here, there's millions of jobs, tons of money, beautiful living, food, healthcare, oh yeah, and it's not true. That's what we do here. We filled up 1.3 million, which would be the equivalent of about 12 million people more in the United States of America last year. Can you imagine another 12 million undocumented? But for us, they're documented, of course. Doesn't matter their status. But imagine them doing that to the United States. Imagine 2.5 times what you just got. And why? Because Canada, like all these other monarchical assets, filled up, and then they dumped all of them because they have all these outlets everywhere. They can fly them right to Canada. Well, now it's flying down south, dump them on a system through the IMO and all those NGOs at the League of Nations who have little hotels set up. They all scroll right through to the U.S. border. Joe Biden's complicit. Joe Biden's doing it. I urge Americans to look at it. Just look up carbon tax, carbon pricing. You don't know what I'm talking about because you don't have it. Well, we know what it is in Canada, and so do all the Commonwealth countries, all the colonial assets. Anyone who's named, defined as a subject or savage has these things. There's your immigration route. There's all the countries participating. That's where all the immigrants are getting dumped on the United States known as illegals. And you've all seen the videos. There's Asians, there's Middle Easterners, and everyone sees it. Texas sees it. I know that. I've talked to some of your politicians. They've got video. We've seen it on the news. They've got video. It's not all just South Americans. There was always a South American migration, but now we're way ballooned more than that. Who's got the infrastructure to fly people from all over the world and dump them there? Who's setting up this little hotel chain and this little underground railway of illegal immigrants? It's the colonials. And Joe Biden knows it. He signed on to it. Again, go look at the Palace of Nations. I'm going to say it again. Palace of Nations. Every NGO you hate, all those you call globalists, go look at their addresses. They're all in the same office building in Geneva, Switzerland. Go look at the Palace of Nations. They all have the same address within units of each other. They're all in the same building. True, credible, real, verifiable. They've been at it for many, many decades. They get more bold, more strong as USA gets weaker, Russia gets weaker, China gets weaker, they get stronger. That's my video. This is for all my friends and followers who asked me to do this. I tagged Roseanne Barr. I hope it makes it to MEL. I hope that these Americans see that at a real good trick. Like I said, when you start looking at words and you start looking at things, it's called legal speak. I took it in the UK, in the University of London, by the world's greatest expert ranked today in legal speak. And they taught me that. Lexilogos for Russia, Webster's for USA, Oxford, UK, and you can go on and on. There's another for France, any nation you want. They have one. And the way they define the same words, the definitions are different. You have to look at that. Don't take anything for granted because you're getting fooled. And a lot of nice Americans get fooled every day. A lot of nice Russians get fooled every day. They think, oh, how could they get this wrong? It means this. No, they're tricking you. That's not how they define it. They've pulled a fast one on you. And remember, there are only 6 nations in the world that are real we the people republics. Only 6 out of 193. That should scare everybody, and I hope that wakes up Roseanne Barr and this MEL, because the worst thing can be that you're just on something, but you don't have the skills, or somebody didn't show you some critical information at a key time. And I know people wanted me to do this quite a while ago, and I was going to, my birthday and all of that, and then I just got banned for a month. But as I promised, I did it. And the reason why I didn't do it on Sunday, everybody, is because I have a monumental thing going on now. I'm meeting with a good First Nations group. We're going to strike another blow, just like residential school genocide. At least try to make that blow. I got to keep it on the real down low because, everything we did and all the First Peoples, God bless all of them, thank the Creator, that came along on board with me on that and trusted me. You all saw it. They all saw it, Canadians and First Peoples, that the political powers that be, obviously Trudeau, they were right behind us. Literally, successes we had in 1 week, boom, in come the powers that be, literally, and then they make a public deal, and we're just sitting there going, wow, you just swept in. And I mean, I want to see right things done for people. I want to see people get some kind of justice, but there's justices that are worth so much more going this route that I'm trying to do, and we have done, that this time we're going to keep it real quiet until we can deliver. I mean, obviously, when I get to a certain publication point, yes, everyone's going to be made aware, and that's important, but we're going to try to hit another mighty blow. So wish me luck, everybody, and I'm sorry. I'll still do lives. I'm going to be doing my lives, but there's important stuff going on that I'm going to keep it a little more quiet this time, because it's when they swoop in like that, it just makes you go, ooh. So thanks everybody. I hope this makes a lot of people happy, and share, share, share. Get it out there. I hope Roseanne sees it. I hope Mel K sees it. I hope they take the knowledge here and they go verify it and find these very, very important truths from a subject. And that's all I am. I'm just an average Joe who's had a blessed life, a truly blessed life to have been involved with some tremendous individuals. Like, look at me, I'm in a work camp up north Alberta, right? I'm a welder by trade, and it's kind of funny that all these international things I've done and been involved with, and so many of you have been involved with me to see the reality of it, and it's incredible for a little guy. And I hope if anything comes of this video, please, Roseanne, Mel K, take that if you watch it, or even bits and pieces of it. I know nobody likes to watch long videos, you don't have the time, but this is a critical one to take you to the next level, to help you from falling in the pitfalls and the poison, the lies, the misdirection, to lead you away from that critical truth. And you two ladies are just this close, so close. Like I said, I don't agree with all the things you guys say, but on this one, you're that close, and I'm like, come on, ladies, you're that close. So I hope this video, if it makes it to them, it gets them on the level and they see it for what it is. God bless everybody. Thank you, and share, share, share. Get it out there. If I get enough views, and maybe Roseanne will watch it too. Bye now.